Hello, everyone. Welcome to the webinar on Agentic Analytics. AI is the new BI. We're 1 minute past 11. We waited a little bit for people to join, and now let's kick things off. So welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining and blocking some time for us. We're going to talk a bit today about Agentic Analytics. AI is the new BI. Does this mean dashboarding and reporting disappearing? We're seeing, of course, the rise of AI LLMs disrupting all technology and tools. And the question is, do we show data? Do we act on data? And what does the shift actually mean? That's what we're going to talk about today. So my name is Geoffrey Smolders. I am the CEO of Biztory. For the last 10 to 15 years, I've been working into data and BI. I've come across the more legacy technology to the newer technology. And of course, I love witnessing the fast-paced evolution of our market, but also trying to address the concerns of customers and people around the world to help you understand what the next steps are in the evolution of BI. What I want to talk about today is a bit what is obvious. We're using data completely in new ways. Data has become a pure commodity of everything. The success of LLMs is obviously based on data, but we see data being used into deep analysis for climate change. We see AI models being introduced to the pharma industry. We see analytics everywhere, from sports to nature. It's quite an incredible time to be alive. That being said, is that one of the questions we're facing today is that we need to move from dashboard to decisions. And maybe that's a bit of a weird terminology because we are making decisions based on dashboards on a daily basis and reports. But how can we automate these decisions using agentic AI? And that's what we're going to talk about today a little bit more. So I would say there's a bit of a new era for data analytics today. Agentic analytics is moving the needle from dashboards to decision-making automatically. If you look at the history, obviously we've been doing reporting, organizing and maintaining our data for more than, I think, 30, 40 years now. This moved from Excel-based reporting to things like Business Object, Cognos on the rise. And then, of course, at some point, visual analytics took it by storm. Tools like Tableau and Power BI started really allowing users to visualize their data and find insights and patterns very fast in a self-service manner. The shift in the last 2 years has been mainly about what we call AI-powered analytics. So AI-powered analytics is really developing smart insights by using LLMs that support those insights. Think of things like ThoughtSpot on the market, or Sigma and Ask Sigma, but also Tableau Pulse, which not only shows you a metric, but immediately gives you context and insights and allows you to ask questions about these insights. But the next step is really to move to that agentic analytics, where we actually have the data work for us autonomously without any interaction from a human and help of AI agents. So we're moving a bit in this kind of stage. We're going to show you today how AI-powered conversational pulse metrics work, but I also want to inspire you a bit how agentic analytics can probably plan your future and take action in your organization and give you more time back to really work on the matters that are important for you. However, we need to pause here for a second, and is that data and AI activation is still a big challenge at every organization. With every enterprise we have a conversation with every CDO we talk to, probably they spend quite a lot of money on organizing their cloud data stack or their data stack on premise. There's experiments with AI. There's big pressure to modernize. The business is embracing AI solutions very fast, but they need to work at scale and they need to work with all the data available. So what we see is that insights demand is rising. People want absolute fingertip real-time insights on their data, but we cannot always find this activation completely done. Why is that? What we see in the market is that only 20% of AI models or proof of concepts really get registered for production activation. So we do see is that small proof of concepts or agentic proof of concepts are working today, and we see some success factors, But across the organization, it's really a challenge to really get those models into production. And there's a few reasons for that. One of the most reasons is that only 44% of companies, according to Google Cloud Data and Trends report, is really confident in their organization's data quality. And that's quite logical. I mean, there's so many applications in an organization, and really following up to get that data in shape, in order, is a big challenge we're facing today. Also, what we see is that your data analyst in the organization, whether that's a person working in the business or working from the BI team, are spending and wasting time on data analysis and preparation, which means if we want to build those insights, we often still have to rely on manually prepping the data or using tools like Tableau, ThoughtSpot, or maybe writing SQL queries to really get the data into shape before we can work on that data analysis. So that means we're wasting time preparing data and not using the valuable time to really build those insights. Which means that only 30% of people say that their actions are really driven by data, and we still act on gut feeling. Now, if we compare this to an analogy I like to make, I kind of see a company as an orchestra, and this person on the screen would say is the modern data analyst. And the modern data analyst today is not purely somebody who works on insights building dashboards anymore. The modern data analyst has to do, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of time on data prep, but also a lot of time on actual analysis of data. So it feels a bit like we're playing three instruments at the same time. You keep your violin playing to have those beautiful insights and dashboards up to date and fresh, and to have the reports. But the trumpet is ad hoc requests blowing the air from the business that really wants fast insights or a fast report that they can get to, which again wastes time to spending to really working on data prep. And we need to keep the beat flowing, which means the data quality needs to be pure. We need to be sure that all the data is organized in a certain way. So we're kind of trying to play three instruments at the same time, and it's causing a lot of delays and stress for that data analyst. And this is the reason is very simple, that the data estate today is still fragmented. Whether you're a large organization or a smaller enterprise, I always start to compare with Biztory. We're a reasonably mid-sized consultancy, about 90 to 100 people, but we also do have almost 40 plus applications running, which are all stitched together and flowing nicely into Snowflake data lake. That being said, at the average enterprise, we see 1,061 applications. Sometimes these applications run under the radar of IT. So I would say that the technology leaders, the CIO, the CDO, struggle really with those data silos, and having all that data flowed in together into one data lake is a real challenge, which means if you don't have all the data available, your decision-making gap is going to be very difficult. A second thing we see in the market is that people work in certain applications, whether it's your Slack or Teams integration where you do most of the work, or you're in Salesforce most of the day, doesn't really matter. But people like to sit in the place where they work. That's where their truth lives, that's where everything is available. However, if they need to go to insights, often we see still in organizations that the insights live somewhere else. You need to start logging in into some BI portal, whether it's Tableau or it's your Power BI portal, and that's where your truth lives. But you need to constantly shift between the application where you work and back to the application where the BI is. Obviously, there's ways to embed those insights absolutely in your application, and that's definitely a trend we will see following up. And then next to that, there's what we call the islands of trapped data, whether it's your data lake, whether it's other systems where data lives and is not connected to the place where you work. Yeah? So if you're, for example, mostly in Salesforce, but some of your critical data is another ERP application, you want to have those insights in Salesforce available without having to move to an insights platform. On that level, above that, there's decisions being made at all layers. So I think the most daily decisions happen on the floor, where absolutely frontline, whether you're a service engineer or you're a sales consultant or you're in operations or finance, you need to make daily decisions, mostly driven on data on a daily basis. Then there's the business leaders who watch over those KPIs, which have been set as a global company level, and also need to uncover where something is going wrong and what we need to do. And then there's the C-level who wants the high-level metrics to really look at the company-wide strategy and are we still moving forward at the right direction. So it feels a bit back to the orchestra. It feels a bit like we're in a disconnected orchestra. We all have brilliant musicians, whether it's your sales department on the left or it's on the bottom, somebody else from the operations team. They're all playing their tune perfectly. We all have, I would say, a good control of our local data and everything, but sometimes it feels a bit disconnected by not defining the right business terminology in the organization, by not having a business metadata layer which speaks the same language, which often leads to no harmony, no concert, and a lot of noise. And if you add AI to the mix, and AI has no insight in what some terminology means, that noise will just become louder. So the question we ask ourselves is, will agentic analytics solve everything? I'm not here to say that is the future, but it isn't BI 2.0, but it's a fundamental architectural shift between the islands. We can bridge them together to have a more insightful, beautiful view. But first, let's take a look what agentic analytics actually is. Today, if you look at the left side, most organizations will have some form of static dashboards and reports. Some of these dashboards will be highly interactive and allow you to unravel and find insights. There's a need to be discovered in those insights. There's not always the right context in there. With context, we mean, okay, if somebody is looking at, for example, revenue, for me, revenue is a simple KPI, but for somebody else, that could be, hey, what's my sales look like? Sales and revenue often means the same in some people's heads, but it's not defined that way. So the context is really important. Insights are delivered mostly in the BI platform. As I said, you have to go to the Insights platform. And often we do not define actions on a BI platform. Most BI platforms are allowed to take actions today, but we do not have those actions built into those dashboards. We mostly look at those insights. We have a meeting, Teams, Slack, or a physical meeting. We talk about what we see, and then we start taking action. On the right side, the extreme right side, if you look at autonomous agents and autonomous BI, we could offer more dynamic AI-powered insights, giving more little insights on the go, already defined on the metric, giving more context to what is happening. They are being brought proactively to you, a little bit similar to what alerting does in most BI tools. But there's also business context, because if we define the business context correct, the model can actually say, okay, we see this happening that's related to X, and Y, and Z, and we really have that ready. It's also delivered in the flow of work. What we prefer as Biztory is not to go to another agent or go to ChatGPT or go to Gemini, but actually have the agent delivering the flow of work where you are. So if you're working in Teams or in Slack or again in Salesforce, you want to be able to access that agent right there and ask your questions with a context window perfectly there. And the last important factor is an agent can take action. An agent can move actions, workflows, can kick off workflows based on an insight it unravels. If you look at the BI market, I put a few famous tools on here like Tableau, ThoughtSpot, and Sigma. We see that they're also shifting to the agentic world. Tableau is introducing Tableau Next. ThoughtSpot and Sigma have native action workflows built in there. So we're not talking anymore about dashboard. We're actually talking about BI apps or data apps really working on that. And there's a few factors I want to run through. So let's talk as a first one about AI-ready data. AI-ready data means that your data is organized in such a way that all the context is in there and it understands how to handle with an LLM. For that, of course, as with any AI model, you need to have your data foundation absolutely correct. Your data foundation is really based on 3 pillars, of course. It's ingesting the data in the correct source, whether that is to a cloud data warehouse, whether that's in Data 360 from Salesforce or Databricks. We really need to ingest the data correct for purposes. Then we need to model that. We need to build a nice metadata layer or a semantic layer, which I'm going to talk about in a bit. And of course, we need to map everything correct so that if there's different systems, that these systems can talk to each other and connect to each other on a logical way. So if we look at semantics, that is becoming an important part of the future. Obviously, we have built semantic layers for years. And if you look at a deployment like Tableau, where you have your data sources, you've built your semantic layer inside of your data sources, your logical dimensions and your measures in a business fashion manner. So any business person can understand what they're looking at. But semantics for AI needs more to allow agentic to work. So if you look at a very simple example of semantics, obviously you have your raw data coming in from a data set, but the semantic layer really defines the KPI glossary in your organization. And we've done that for quite a while already, but we've stopped at a certain point. So the simple example I want to show here is if you look at something like gross revenue, we can mention, okay, our format for gross revenue is in the currency USD, but we have to do a step further. We have to allow context for the agentic models to understand a bit more. Obviously, if my gross revenue goes up is good, that's the trend. But we also need to put in those synonyms, like I mentioned earlier. Synonyms like, hey, what's my income today? Or what's my sales today? Which maybe a salesperson also sees as revenue. So an LM understands, okay, he wants to talk about sales. Let's look at the revenue for this customer. And we need to guardrail an LLM. We need to stop it from hallucinating and start adding in things it cannot do. So we know, for example, if we're looking at gross revenue, we do not want to include returns in this example, and we just want to have that ready. Which means, agentic-wise, the output can track the revenue, it can understand that sales are up 5%, or it can understand, hey, there's a dip coming, which needs to give an alert back to the human. So if you organize that very well, actually your semantic layer, you have to see as your sheet music in your orchestra. So your sheet music is really not looking at your simple KPI definitions, but really understanding what are my trends, what do I need to exclude, what synonyms are we talking about, what kind of models do we need to really have that playing really correctly. So everyone in the organization understands perfect what profit margin is, what the customer segment is, what year-to-date growth is. And also AI models can start understanding that. Without this semantic sheet music, it will start hallucinating. Then the question is visualizations and insights, because you can say, hey, Geoffrey, you've been talking about agentic AI and AI models understanding that and giving you feedback. But often today, most of the time, AI-driven insights or AI models give you textual information back. What about visualizations and insights? Well, I think I did a post about this quite a while ago on LinkedIn, but if you open LinkedIn today, you'll see vendors posting, people posting dashboards are dead. Dashboards are gone. We don't need dashboards anymore. There's no more need for the BI tool, and I disagree wholeheartedly. For me, dashboards are not dead. We still need interactive insights to look at our data. We still need a visual overview to understand how our business is running. But today, a dashboard is often lonely, is often disconnected. The story I have a little bit here is that if you build a fantastic dashboard, interactive, it has alerting, it has deep dive analysis, so you can do a complete oversight of your whole organization or a certain department, but it still stops at what I call, jokingly, the human API, the human factor. A dashboard provides a certain insight. Let's take the example from revenue earlier. There's a certain revenue dip coming in on a certain department, so an alert gets sent out to a person in the organization. Let's call this person Arend. Arend is getting notification, and he needs to take action because something is going wrong. Maybe there's a stock search, maybe there's something off. Arend is a specialist in his organization on that level, so he can take the action. But even with the dashboard providing the alert, providing the insights correctly to Arend, Arend potentially is a blocking factor because maybe Arend is out to lunch, maybe Arend has a day off, maybe Arend is sick, maybe Arend is at home, and the whole process stops because it gets stuck with Arend moving forward. Now, I'm not saying here Arend needs to be replaced as a person in the organization. His role is important, but some of the repetitive workflows or repetitive actions could be taken automatically using agentic AI, already preparing Arend for his next action and insights. So we need to start activating our dashboards rather than looking at them as a passive way to take action manually on the business. So if you look at this in an orchestra view, I do see there's always a few use cases for this whole overview. One, the jam session. I do think for traditional BI, raw ad hoc analysis, really having a data analyst working on data and finding insights using Tableau and really doing discovery is absolutely important. If you have a certain deeper problem in your organization, that's where you start jamming and you start discovering insights and patterns, which then can be used to improve your metadata layer, your agentic models, and feed that back. The symphony, who's playing the orchestra, they need to have those dashboards available. Those deep interactive dashboards for data exploration need to be provided to the organization and need to be able to work on that. But there's also a need for what we call the hit signal, something my colleague James Newton will show in a little bit, is really that kind of fast, lightweight data checks, single KPIs, providing some context to it and really saying, okay, there's something going on here, can I ask some deeper questions? And then the automated metrics, the actions and the workflows can actually be linked to those dashboards to really take action. Imagine the example of Arend again in the stock search. We do see something dropping down. We need to move stock from left to right. A workflow can be kicked off in Salesforce to really start already organizing, hey, we need to start shifting stock to different stores. And we are getting that workflow order ready. So Arend only has to push a button and accept this change or let the agent execute autonomously. So autonomous actions are really the future of those BI platforms. So BI platforms will no longer be an insight platform, but really an actionable data application platform. And the way it works is that these BI platforms can connect to either things like Agentforce or Snowflake Intelligence or custom-built LLMs and really start leveraging applications workflows, workflows that are built in Slack, workflows in Teams, or custom applications that you have built in your organization and trigger those either using API calls or MCP on top of that to automate action in your organization. So what you need to do as an organization is think about all your business processes, link them to potential workflows so you can actually start replacing the repetitive tasks from humans to AI agentic analytics. So you free up time from these business people to work really on the real important problems. If we get to that, these agents potentially become your digital musicians. They will play the background rhythm of the business, they monitor the data quality, they watch for anomalies, and they answer routine questions. They potentially handle the boring stuff like, hey, I need to create a purchase order because I need some things to happen in this organization. They can already prepare that by kicking off a workflow, and you can start orchestrating your business in that kind of way. That being said, we have to admit something painful. If we just, again, throw AI at the problem without changing the way we work, without defining that semantic sheet music, it will just start sounding like a headache. We need alignment. We need to orchestrate this collaboration together with the data platform. So agentic maturity matters. We believe in a what we call crawl, walk, run level, but I would like to show how we see the maturity level. Obviously, some organizations, and maybe your organization, has worked on chatbots, repetitive tasks, predefined rules. If A, then B, then C. I think we've passed that level and now introduced AI assistance, recommending actions, retrieving information. Today, most LLMs can do this, or most integrated co-pilots or Agentforce can do quite a lot of things and retrieve information to level 1. Then we're deploying level 2 agents in different ways already, really autonomously complexity tasks. Think about a service agent answering emails, or an agent suggesting the next best action to a sales user, really with a siloed data environment and some context to do simple tasks. If we start deploying multiple of these simple AI agents, we are starting looking at collaborative AI agents, which can conduct multiple workflows with the harmonized data across multiple domains or channels. This is often, maybe sometimes referred as agent to agent. So a service agent can call a sales agent to execute a certain task, and they can start working together, or can assign a task to humans and saying, hey, I need some help here before I can execute A or B. And then obviously, if you get to level 4 from the maturity, multi-agent orchestration is really the full agent to agent, that all agents work in different departments together, and have maybe even agent supervision across that. So how do we see to get started? We see really that you need to crawl, walk, run. We obviously advise you strongly to start maybe slowly with real-time monitoring and AI summaries. So AI summaries is saying, I have dashboard X, Y, or Z. Here's a summary of what I'm seeing. I have AI generated alerts. What I mentioned earlier, gross revenue is going down. I need to send an alert. Something is surging, trending down. Please take action on this. And you can do this today with the leading platforms, whether it's Tableau, Power BI, or ThoughtSpot or Sigma. Those platforms have the capability to do that. We will showcase Tableau Pulse in a little bit, how they handle that. If you start walking, then there's really AI actions with a human in the loop validation, which means AI can still do the generated recommendations, but agents will suggest a next best action. For example, you'd say, I have to move this stock to this store. There's a workflow I can kick off in Salesforce to execute this. And a human, in my example earlier, Arndt is notified as saying, hey, my advice is to do X, Y, Z. Can I kick off this workflow, yes or no? So those approval workflows, lightweight, is really helping the organization to do those repetitive tasks, which means Arndt just has to click yes, go execute, and the agent will start executing a workflow, and Arndt can get on to his business and his next actions on his task list today. Obviously, if you want to mature completely and you trust that some decisions can be taken by a model, then an agent can trigger actions by itself. A stock search could be automatically handled by an AI model itself, following certain rules, certain trigger points, and really integrate those platforms and say, okay, I'm going to kick off this workflow because there's a need in that organization to do that. And of course, alerting the agent owner saying, I've executed task Y and Z. The challenge is that most organizations, they focus on the pilot. They will build a quick customer agent or an employee agent. We've seen this ourselves with deploying agent force at customers. They will start a really isolated agent, in some cases not really scaled on the data. They will do static data files. They'll use maybe unstructured data as an input, but not connecting it to the data systems, which means the agent is a bit isolated and probably can do a decent job answering certain questions, but whether it doesn't have all the information available, that where it fails, and that's the 20% I talked about earlier, is that to get it to production, you really need to focus on the entire architecture. The engines need to be able to connect to all your data platforms, whether that's your unstructured data, whether that's your data warehouse, or also certain APIs integration with applications that do not have the data available in your cloud data warehouse, for example. And then you need to link those to your application's workflows, whether your workflows exist in an application like Salesforce, whether you have custom workflows built somewhere else. You really need to start thinking about what workflows can these agents trigger and how do they work in different insights. So Agentic Analytics can work on triggering insights. You can start looking at, for example, planning or operations, or your logistics or import and export features. Whatever the use case is, you need to focus on your entire architecture. So if you start thinking about building an agent, start thinking about your data estate, what it needs to access, and what action it can take. So I would say, if that is an ideal world, you have an orchestra playing where your agentic models can take potentially autonomous decisions and focus on repetitive tasks. And the dashboards are still available to all insights, but they're never the finish line. They're the insight that you provide to your users to really have those insights available. But then the actionable items are either driven by AI agents or by humans in this scatter. So we really see what we see is, I call it interoperable concert, where actually the whole organization is working on the same sheet music, which means humans and AI models can live side by side and really take decisions together, which means we're not replacing people by AI, because that's sometimes the fear that is on the market. We're really just leveraging the power of AI to assist humans in freeing them up from the repetitive work, the boring stuff, and to really have them more time to focus on the real problems to work on. But how does that work? How do we approach that? Biztory has built a 5-stage model approach to accelerate your move to agentic analytics. And the beauty of this is that we see this as a tool agnostic way. So we're not going to focus on you need to do this with tool X, Y, or Z. Basically, the same applies for most of these platforms that have these capabilities. And we work on all these models. So whether you're using Tableau Next, whether you're going to use ThoughtSpot or Sigma, we always follow the same steps. And it's important to really ideate and have that use case design from the start. The ideation often starts from the AI model. I want an AI agent to answer all my service requests and give insights to my users. Okay, but what does that mean? It means you have to evaluate, do I have the data available for this? Is the data defined really well in the semantic layer? Do we have a platform for this available? Or do we need to incorporate one of these platforms to have that agentic model starting? How does the platform talk with other agents? Do we have maybe agents that are nothing to do with analytic agents, but can they activate some kind of workflows? And how do we let them talk together? And then we monitor performance tracking and, of course, the ROI of these agents to improve constant the move forward. So if you look at that a bit more in detail, basically at use case design, we'll start defining your business goals, we'll define use cases ideation, and we'll use a matrix to put this into quick wins, big ideas, maybe ideas we need to move away from, and we're going to see what agentic features we can offer. Obviously, we need to look at the data. What do we need to do to get your data into shape? What steps do we need to take to get your maturity level up? And of course, what skills and culture do you need in an organization to do this yourself? Then we're going to look at your agentic analytics quick start is really looking at, do we have the correct software to do this? Is the semantic setup right? Do we have the embedded insights in our platforms? Because we want agentic analytics to live in the place we work. And how do we integrate this with workflows and tailored? And then we, of course, start tracking and launching these into different cut-up use cases. We do not like the big bang approach. We really want to take use case by use case and then connect them together as we mature in the walk, crawl, walk, run methodology, as we mentioned earlier. Technology, as I mentioned, matters less. We can do this with mobile technologies. It's really an approach we've defined and perfected across the years of our experience. And now it's time for me to stop talking and hand it over to James, who can showcase a bit what AI-powered insights mean in an organization.
Thank you, Geoffrey. So hello, everyone. My name's James Newton, and I'm going to give you a demo today of AI-powered insights using Tableau Pulse. Let me just share my screen with you guys. So I'm going to take on the persona of a CEO at a large retail company, and I'm using AI-powered insights here to monitor the KPIs that are important to me, my business. You can see here that I'm tracking my orders in the last quarter, my profit margin, my revenue, and any orders that have got shipping delays that are greater than 6 days. These insights are delivered directly into my workflow. They can be delivered into my email, into my Slack, or to my Teams at a cadence that suits me. And I can immediately see here that my orders, my profit margin, and my revenue, they're all up versus the prior quarter. but there's nothing significant going on with them. We can see here that they're all within this expected range that has been calculated using statistical analysis, takes into consideration seasonal variations. However, when we get to shipping delays here at the end, we can see there's a sudden spike in the last month. They're up 190%, and it's quite far out of the expected range. So I want to find some more information out about that. Previously, I would have had to go off and navigate to a dashboard to try and find the answer, or I'd have to ask a colleague to investigate this for me. But now, using AI-powered insights, I can ask questions in natural language. So I can come in here and say, what has caused the spike in shipping delays? Pulse will now go and see if there's any preemptive questions that can answer that. And looking through the list here, there isn't. But we can now use the advanced Q&A feature within Tableau Pulse and using a large language model to ask that question. So if I click on that down the bottom there, and that's now sending that question off to a large language model as well as the metric definition. So it'd be shipping delays in the last month, I believe, sorry. And we can see we've got a nice summary here at the top. The spike in shipping delays rose to 29. It's the increase. We already knew that. And it's driven by issues in the furniture category and eastern region. And incorrectly entered ship dates by the furniture team in the east region were a significant factor. So it's gone through all the data that we've provided it within that metric summary and pulled out that it was isolated to the furniture category, the east region. And then there's also been some comments made to say that ship dates were incorrectly entered into the system. So again, we've got the key drivers down here. We can also look and see that visually as well, if we wish to. And it's pulled out other contributing factors as well. So it provides a nice simple takeaway down the bottom here. So going back to Josh's analogy earlier of the orchestra, we can see here how agents can act as digital musicians answering those routine questions. So the analysts, engineers can focus on playing those solos. That's it from the demo from me. So I'd like to hand back over to Joffrey to finish off the presentation.
Thank you very much, James. Normally, you should be able to see my screen again. Let me just put this into sharing mode again. 1 second. There we go. So basically, I think this was a discussion I've had at Data Farm Europe from Tableau last year, is that there's this fear of organizations saying, hey, what's happening to my job? Am I over as a data analyst? No, absolutely not. I always believed, and I always believe in Biztory too, that a data analyst is a business analyst with some technical skills to deploy insights in Tableau. And that's not going away. I think we've just spent too much time on preparing data, building reports, answering ad hoc questions. And some of these things can be moved out to AI agentic models, as you just see in the AI-powered insight with Pulse, allowing us to free up more time for us to really work on the things that matter and do the deep analysis. So we're evolving our type of work, and we're also being assisted by an AI model to help us out. So if we move to really the analogy again I make to music is really designing that beat is going to be different. And I'll give you a few examples. If your sales beat, opportunity hygiene, I'm always looking at sales and pipeline reviews at Biztory also, is detecting things that are happening. For example, a stale deal. I will look at that and will say, hey, this deal is stuck. I'll talk to my sales rep and say, hey, what's going on here? Those things are things you can start programming to automate. Your model can say, hey, there's stale deals here, and can also suggest what is my next best action I can take to do on this deal. And it can automatically ping a sales rep to say close or update, or maybe send a reminder email. Those are simple things we can start doing, which do not require me anymore to look at those 5-line reviews, but actually have an agentic model work on that as agentic analytics. If you look at supply beat, for example, if you're looking in the supply chain, dynamically calculating your stock calculations, you're monitoring that kind of stuff. And also you can have a model query maybe suppliers you're working with to see if we order now, what's the delivery time. And we can also start drafting a PO so we can start messaging the person responsible for supply chain. I have a PO ready to order because a stock search in A or B. Can I order this? This can also all be done by an agentic model completely autonomously. A last example is, of course, for data teams, is really doing quality assurance. Simple example here, detecting null ideas or schema drifting, tracing the lineage, and alerting the engineers to say, hey, you should pause this refresh, or I pause this refresh for you because I see something is going wrong. So really start thinking about designing those processes. So as a mandate, I think the last thing I want to give you is, as an organization leader, you need to start thinking to design for action and not for consumption. You need to start thinking about all your business processes and to see how you can automate workflows that augment your dashboards. So all the investments you made in your insights, reports, and dashboards are not gone. They're just ready to be activated as a data application. So those things can start working with workflows. They can start triggering things. You need to start thinking about those business processes. You also in the organization need to accept that change to your workforce. You need to shift the incentives, not from, hey, I found an insight and I did this and this, but I found an insight and I defined an action that can be taken either by AI agent or alerting somebody to take this action. So you need to start thinking about how do we reward our data teams to really think about the next step. And obviously, I cannot stress this enough, your semantic layer is your strategic asset. It's not your RT metadata anymore, it's the whole layer where everything falls under. So if your metadata and your semantic layer is defined very well, then both your human workforce and your agentic workforce can work on this together and talk the same language, play the same tune, play the same orchestra. What is the failure point? The semantic foundation is not there. So there's raw data being fed to AI models, they start hallucinating and mistrust. An obvious question I get a lot is, but my semantic layer is not finished. How do I handle this? There's ways around that. Please talk to us how we can really help you get that semantic layer going. No workflows. Think about your organization and all your business processes. What things are potentially being built in workflows? If you do not have workflows and you take a lot of steps manually, it means a model is basically limb and cannot take action on that because there's no things to trigger. And no ownership model, very important. An agent should have an owner. Just treat an agent as one of your team members. If you're a team lead or the department head and you have 5 or 6 FTEs, an agent is one of those FTEs working for you and should be treated as your employee. You can tune, help, and fine-tune the model to get better at its job. So that being said, I want to leave you with this. I mentioned the Agentic Analytics Accelerator. If you just want to brainstorm with us, also, of course, welcome to hook us up on a call and really have a bit of insight on how you can do this. If you have questions on how do I deploy my agents, what technology we use, we're happy to talk to. But if you're interested in really following our accelerator to enable Agentic Analytics today in your organization, then you can discover the accelerator by scanning the QR code or go to our website and find on the accelerators the Agentic Analytics Accelerator. Before we close, we obviously like to do a lot of webinars, so I would like to invite you to register for next webinars. Is really looking at how do I handle agentic maturity, what are AI activation strategies from prototype production. We're looking at building a data stack for the age of AI. We're looking at your data stack optimization. How do we handle a modern data stack and how do we balance cost and scale? We're also going to look at modern BI on top of Snowflake. And of course, modern BI in practice, how do we move beyond those legacy dashboards to really have insights? With that being said, I don't know if there's still Q&A I need to answer. Let me just check if there's any questions in here. I do not see any questions yet. If not, I'm going to hold for a few seconds, and I want to thank you for your attention, and don't be shy to reach out if you have questions after this webinar.